probably already knit a full sweater by now since Confluence, or like 2 pairs of socks maybe.
She finished her socks and finished the baby sweater for my dear friends, my Annapolis friends who are down in Virginia.
Very nice. You know I'm from Yorktown. I don't think I ever told you that.
You did. Right by the cooler. I mean, I'm glad to say that I have pretty good memories of things that you shared with us, and I so appreciate that. You know, the biographical things are interesting, and then as we did, we get to learn more of what people really stand for. You may recognize what I look like. You probably don't recognize what I sound like because I've been screaming since I got home.
I was gonna say your voice sounds like it's been strained a wee bit.
You know, it's not like I was screaming all day at Confluence, other than on the inside. And since I've been home, people do, I don't think I'm overstating to say people do depend on my energy, especially at 06:30. And, to charge them up, and I'm shouting over awful pop music that I do not control. So when I do, we actually have some good jams. But so yeah, it's a little strained.
So there's no way you could, swap the 440 hertz to a 432 or maybe even 528?
I gotta play with it. I'll probably have to call on Brooke for that one. Now that I'm lucky to count her as a resource, because yeah, it's just one volume. You know, it's so people can. Some of them are older, Lauren. You know, or they're just so. You know, there's so many things going on that people just don't really focus. So I have to say their names several times and then hit the ball like right at them, like right there.
What age group are they again?
Most of my days are with adults, and then I do have some great educational sessions with anyone, youth from 5, 6 years old to 18. But those groups are obviously separate. And I actually have a great picture of me and one of the little girls I was teaching that I just reposted the other day. But a lot of adults, and I don't know if we talked about that, but you can probably guess at the burden that the ego is for adults when they're learning something new, especially something that is highly technical. Do you golf, or have you golfed?
Golfed, but
Okay. So you know how intensely technical that swing is, and you need mad reps, and people don't have that approach to tennis. They don't think about really tuning into technique, and then they just wonder why I suck, and oh my God, I can't play, and I'm awful. And I said, it's not like you, it's just a dynamic learning system that you need to master, or at least to pursue mastery of. So I tell people, as a coach, I'm here to remind you more often than I'm here to teach you. So do you agree with that? Do you feel like in some things you have to remind people more than just, yeah, okay.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I feel like my higher self is always reminding me various things along the way. I mean, I've always said that vision leaks. And so we always have to refill back up our vision cups because it just keeps leaking over and over and over again. And so that's okay. That just means there's sticky notes everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. It is okay, right? It still feels good to grab those sticky notes off the wall. You keep anything on your walls these days? Like, are you looking at anything fun I just asked for if you keep any motivational things or specific pieces of art. I'll just say quickly.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that as a surfer myself. So tell me more.
It's Laird Hamilton, and getting access to him through the tremendous virtual men's group I told you about that was so formative for me was, asking him about his legitimate 100-foot waves, and then our leader saying, well, what's your metaphorical 200-foot wave for your lifetime, and hearing where he got to go with things. So just having that kind of model on my wall is motivating when I remember to look at it.
Legend.
He literally is.
Yeah.
From one legend to another, that's high praise.
I met my husband when I moved to Myrtle Beach, and he was a sponsored surfer. So he was pretty good,
Also,
pretty good. He was my best teacher. But we live right by the beach in Myrtle. And so we started our day off, a little golf cart ride to the beach, a little swim in the salty negative ion ocean. Can't beat it. But it did remind me of our mineral pool session. We've got so many things to talk about, Tom, because we've got to paint a picture for people about Confluence. So just for context, if random people are watching this and they're like, who the heck is Tom Foolery and Lauren Riddei? Well, we met at this event called Confluence, the third event that they've had in Bandera, Texas. It was on a regenerative farm. It's a working farm. And so, Tom, what I want us to do, let's just paint the canvas. What did we see? What did we observe? What did we notice? Kind of what were the details of this event so that we can bring people into this picture?
I'm so excited I get to go back there with you a week later,
Yes.
even though it does feel, I have no idea how it feels in terms of when it happened, how much happened.
It's a blur.
As for what happened and what we saw, I had been to Texas Hill Country my first time in Texas last September, and that was really special of seeing similar landscape and ranches at work. And so to be a resident on Sovereignty Ranch, and from what I understand, is only a handful of years old, the way that they've been able to achieve green amidst all the brown and gray and tan and the Texas clay that when it got downpoured upon during our time there was totally different, otherwise super dry. And yeah, rolling in there across ranch land and then out onto that property, seeing little armadillos scurry across the land, and then you pull up on the goats and the cattle. And I really enjoyed getting to camp out probably a little bit more than half a mile outside of where our general orbit was for presentations and workshops and eating and being in the sun and yeah, being able to be on these little islands for camping where other animals are still roaming, and we're watching them rotate them. And we were there for just a couple of days, but you see different groups on the move, and obviously all the ranch hands that have to contribute to that. And did you get like when you rose? Were you able to see the sun really easily where you were?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
Yeah.
came up right at my tent entry.
Did you pay extra for that?
No, but however, I will say, and we'll come to this, but I feel like the whole event was just doused in magic and synchronicities and just really God ordained appointments. I mean, this was one of those things where I was like, man, I would love a tent that just, is right on the edge of society, not in the midst of all the tenters, but like just kind of off to the edge so I can see the sun. And that was the tent I received, Had the best tent buddies next to me. I left that event and I told my husband, I said, hey, whatever brand this shift pod is, like this canvas tent, we need to buy one. We need to just basically start living fully outside. Because one of the beautiful things about this event, as you know, Tom, is learning outside, eating outside, sleeping outside. There were very few points that we were inside a structure. If we were, it wasn't for long. And it just struck me, that is entirely how we're supposed to be living. Like, how much more would kids absorb if they were learning underneath the sunshine?
Possibly everything. I mean, well, at least more awareness than most people, because you mentioned vision, and both inner and externally oriented vision. There's so little of myself that I can see when I look out in the world. So the inner vision is big, but then the external vision of more horizon than this is literally a limited view of reality. And even though there's so much going on, and I know I'm being redundant and cliched, but I don't know if people always appreciate the depth of screen consumption.
Right.
Posture is such a big deal. And so then you're not open. If you're here, and so much of life is here, if you're not open to then experience things with a vision through your chest and your heart and your back and your neck and obviously your eyes too.
Yeah.
So I think they would just absorb and consume and digest everything.
I mean, at one point I was doing Qigong in the back and I see you and Jordan like perched up on these rocks.
Like cats, like two big cats.
Like cats. And I'm just like, this is how we should be doing school. Moving when we need to move, receiving sun when we need to receive sun. Because there was so much learning. And I still am at a loss for words, as I'm sure you are, Tom, integrating all of this information. I did reach a point where my brain was full. I couldn't receive any more information because I needed to output. And I think what we're doing today is outputting. We did a lot of input, but it's really crucial in the kind of integration phase to start outputting. journaling, speaking, sharing. And we've only been home a few days, but I'm finding this so valuable because, it's kind of one of those things like you had to be there to know what the heck went on. And we're eating great food. I mean, talk about the food, right? Like, amazing.
Yeah, rolling up to that to sustain you, along with the water and the light, and an event like this, we're in Texas ranch, utilities, whatever they are, making sure people had some of the best quality water that they could access, and that's such a big deal for sustain us as well, and our own waters, and balancing out the sunlight and everything that goes on with that. So then to replenish with great, iced cacao deliciousness and with mushrooms and things like that, and then a sourdough pizza really hits the spot, and obviously it feels good on the gut, and you're moving through all that. It's all seamless, and that's a big deal to because I mean, even with the input, I mean, it's something like 80% of energy expenditure is on glucose for the brain, or maybe just of glucose, but like of all the glucose in the body that we experience, and 80% of it goes to thoughts. So input, and how much of this am I really feeling, and then bringing down into myself. And I did feel deeply nourished by the elements and the food and the water, and very full. Yeah, very, very full.
So this was all took place on a 200-acre farm that I believe was started in 2021. So you had hit on this earlier, the infrastructure. Yeah, it did go up fast. And I know they had put up that main stage structure, I think, recently, so that we could be in the shade a little bit. It was just so beautiful because it was a family event. So there were little kids running rampant. I think there was a
Yeah.
group of kids collecting scorpions, like
Scorpion boys, that's right.
in a bucket, and then you've got the elders with all this wisdom intermingling with all age groups. I just think it was such a holistic audience as well, coming from different backgrounds. I mean, it's very rare to all kind of share a similar philosophy of life, freedom, sovereignty, holistic living, holistic eating, but then also within that realm to have such a diverse working background. I mean,
The most. The
yeah.
most.
So as you interacted with people, Tom, like what were you most struck by?
Readiness and openness to lean in and have a conversation of meaning. And that means the world to me. That's why I podcast. That's why I say fuck yes to any chance to do this. Part of it is, the recording to circulate our experience and just see who else is remotely interested in these things when they hear about the excitement and dynamism with which we talk about it. And to be able to bounce right off each other, and that's such a I try to bring in tennis analogies for my own benefit, because Mark Gober, I think, was asking me to do that, and some challenged me to do that, and someone else did too. If tennis is such a big part of my life, what are some good tennis metaphors for life? And that kind of conversation is one where, in the physics of tennis, you get 50% of your speed from your opponent's speed. Like you can depend, even if you swing the same. Let's say my swing speed is 50 miles per hour, and they're ratcheting it up. Like, it just builds off each other, even though I'm not swinging any harder. And that's what conversation felt like, is like we keep ratcheting up and then into the depths, but very easy to sustain that level of connection and conversation with people. And I think a big part of that is, you assume a familiar foundation, familiar territory, and it's great to be surprised after that, what people are open to or closed to or haven't explored yet. One of my favorite themes that came up with people I had, several young men I had good time with, was people saying, "Oh, I had never thought about that before."
Yes.
Those are the people who then say, "Well, let me think about it." Let me think about it as much as possible now. And I know most of the people just say, "I never thought about it before." And to bring in Mark Gober's analogy for a multiple choice test, and someone says, a teacher says, "I need one answer from you from A, B, C, and D," and you do all the homework. Typical person, and one person in the group doing all the work does all the homework to determine that A is completely falsifiable. This choice, this thing that you never thought about before, but this is the story, falsifiable. And everyone agrees, totally. None of that stuff makes sense. But is it B, C, or D? And you say, I'd have to do a lot more homework on that to determine those three. And they say, well, then we're going to say it's A. And you say, but you just agreed that it's not true and it's falsifiable. And they say, A is all we got.
Yeah.
So people who have gone past that on things of real importance, like your health and vitality and what actually makes you feel free and what you believe about your ability to heal. And that wide openness from people was so appreciated.
I often found that I was getting people's names like as we were exiting. It was like, oh, by
Yeah.
the way, tell me your name.
Yeah.
Because like, not that,
What do they call you where you're from? My
yeah,
name?
not that the names are important, but because we were able to just dive right into the meaningful, rich conversations of each other's lives.
And not least of all with the various presenters and workshop creators, because we might have the benefit of knowing their name and a lot of what they're about. And they seem to reciprocate that. I think they also value mutual experiences and maybe something outside. But yeah. And then they say, and what's your name? You.
I know. And then it's like, okay, I just met about 200 people. So please do not take offense if I forget. Unless we
Yes.
all have like insane memories like you do, Tom. Like,
No, I
you're
don't know.
getting the middle name and the last name. Wow, you are overachieving.
And then double Virgo and where
Yeah,
exactly and which hospital and who are your parents
yeah,
and what did they do to you
yeah,
and yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
So, one thing I really appreciated about Confluence was the fact that it was a choose your own adventure. So when you pulled up the speaker list and the workshop list, my first feeling was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make it to all of this? Like, I just want to learn, 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 learn,
Yeah,
and
like where's the
ABBB.
workshop on time? Where's the workshop on time so we can figure out how to
Yeah,
have one leg in each workshop.
exactly. Well, then I realized that they did that on purpose. So it was a choose your own adventure. And for me, what I realized was it created a framework for this sovereign ownership, this self governing versus outsourcing our own decisions.
Imagine that.
Right. And so we were able to then own our decision of saying, okay, I'm going to this workshop versus them telling us which workshop was next.
And that, I mean, I've been lucky in a way. You talk about for all the input we got, the output. I've had time of a lot of downtime in the last several years, and there's been a lot of input in that, and that feels very heavy if I don't have the avenues to output. So that's appreciated. And then yeah, that freedom of I really do choose to, and obligation's a really big commitment. To say that to feel obligated to do anything, and if it doesn't come from a place of real heartedness and love and passion toward, then you do feel heavy with any sort of burden. We said that multiple times a day. Jordan just saying, "Oh, do we have to go to this?" There's no have to. If you know Dana Katz, she'll tell you that there's no have to, and that felt great. And I do my best to continue to have that sort of schedule, where if there are obligations that are true obligations, I've committed, and otherwise, I really do get to choose my own adventure,
Yes. Yes.
moment to moment, and how I choose to spend my time that is enriching. And I do take accounting for what I consider to be fruitful or productive, and then that doesn't mean that the opposite is frivolous. It's often very fulfilling. And so, some good cycles towards the end of outputting with Jordan, just grabbing a table, she pulls out her knitting, and we just get to lock back into what we were talking about. Because if I go 75 minutes without blinking, like I did in a couple of those talks, then yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta blink a couple times.
Specifically, Steve Young, no?
For sure, that being in the brewery was actually quite
Yeah.
fun. Despite being indoors, worth it. Although I don't know about you with those chairs, and I know those chairs from restaurants. I'm like, I don't have a big butt, but I feel like they don't sit great. They didn't sit great in those chairs, so I'm like, it helped me literally lean in to just like be sculpture. And I'm not complaining about the chairs. We were lucky to have any chairs instead of standing room only. That's not the point. I just remember it was worth it to sit in those chairs,
Yeah.
listen to him, listen to Paul Leendertz, I believe is his name, speaking about root cause of cancer.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, yes.
I know we can reflect on all that, but choose your own adventure is a T-shirt at least, if not a bumper sticker, if not a mantra for this summer.
Speaking of t-shirts, I bought the same t-shirt for my husband Ryan. Can you turn around? It's such an epic design, and I should have grabbed it to read it, but it's basically a beautiful mission statement incorporating. Oh, okay, all right, here we go. The tennis coach, being the tennis
Yeah,
coach. Can you read it,
we are
please? Because it's a beautiful statement.
we are a worldwide community united in health, freedom, and coherence, committed to remembering who we are and reclaiming our inherent sovereignty. We educate, empower, and connect men and women from all walks of life to dissolve societal conditioning, restore natural health principles, seek truth, and through our events, podcast, marketplace, and community platform, we explore life-affirming topics such as terrain-based health, common law, permaculture, and the nature of reality. At its core, the way forward is about guiding individuals back to their innate divinity, because from within rises divinity.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, I got that shirt specifically for Ryan because he's in process of receiving his permaculture design certificate, and
There
I
you
said,
go.
hey, you got to come with us next year because he would love it.
Yeah.
But
And just no FOMO for him was all I'm going to say. We'll see him in time next time.
I know, yeah, yeah, he'll come, and the
Yeah.
really the window opened up for me. I've had years of health issues and complications since 2021, so I wasn't actually even able to get to the first or second consultation.
I was going to say that that's part of what makes you so remarkable is your vitality despite that. So
Yeah, thank you.
keep rolling. Yeah.
Thank you. And so, I knew they were going on, but like I couldn't. I mean, I was literally not able to sit for 2 years. So I was either laying horizontal or I was standing because of so much pain from the injury that I was, or the accident that I was in. And so to be able to like have this vitality come back into my mind, body, and spirit, and then to be able to not forget who I am, and then to interact with so many people, I would say that my brain is still kind of coming back online. And so I'm so excited to see where my brain will be in even 3 years from now. I will remember all of those details.
I was going to say if this is you at a deficiency, I'm impressed. You're already soaring above some of us. Some of us.
I do a lot of brain retraining.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Do you do much work with vision?
But yes, with yoga
Yeah.
every day,
Yeah. Okay, cool.
every single day. Yep.
You go get to look at water horizon, which is special.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it really, I found that because it impacts the vagus nerve, it's just so calming and grounding. So yeah, I'm doing yoga exercises all the time.
I start almost all my private and small group tennis
Do
lessons with.
you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm shouting out for the first half hour. Starts with the eyes. Starts with the eye, big wide eyes. Go watch everything. And it's not like a sequence of, it's funny. I know Stephen Young brought up the way that classical human biologists think of things like the nervous system and synapses is like, oh, it has to travel all the way from your eyes and your brain to your feet to get your feet move quickly. And there's so much that happens before that that is super sensory,
Mm-hmm.
to borrow a term from Steiner, I believe. And I know he means that in more of a using all potential sensory inputs, like we saw even when a blindfold and how much you depend on your vision, what you can still feel and experience. And but yeah, I mean, there are things that are even faster than instantaneous and happening before. And a lot of that is through open focus. Are you familiar with open focus? Which is, yeah. So those types of things have helped me cultivate and remind people to bring in like, yeah, go from a point. Like one of the ones I have people do is hold their thumb out in front and turn their head the opposite way
Yes.
and track it with their peripheral. And people are so reckless and dishonest. Like they're like this. And I say, I know you can't see it. You could barely see it when it was right in front of you. And I just tell people slow down and really execute with purpose what you're trying to do. And yeah, I find it massively helpful.
And in that VU breath, next level.
What's that?
So
Shoot, while you track
while
stuff.
you're tracking.
Yeah. I'll probably say 50% of people say, I'm not doing that. And I'll say, I'll stand right here until you fucking do it. So
Every morning I'm like a full-on circus act. Like, I'm
probably wake the neighbors. Like when I go out and do my thing at sunrise, my cat is belting at the screen door, and I'm like, dude, it's 5:30.
yeah.
Other people are definitely not up. I'm lucky I'm up. And then next door is Lauren.
Yep, basically. And I loved watching people implement their disciplines while at Confluence. I mean, so many people just didn't even skip a beat. You being one of these disciplined souls. One of the mornings I had just not had a chance to get in the mineral pool yet, but one of the mornings I caught you and Jordan heading that way, probably after your Qigong practice. And it was so cool because we walked. I mean, I don't know about you. I probably walked miles every day, back and forth, up and down. And I just loved all that dynamic foundation under my earth runners to be able to feel the rocks and feel the topography change. And that's something I'm really missing, is that kind of 24/7 cycle of being immersed in nature. But that was a huge highlight for me. I'd love to hear from you, Tom. Give me we'll go back and forth with our highlights, but give me something that you are just jazzed about from Confluence.
You're doing a brilliant job of stewarding us, so thank you. And unfortunately, I'll derail us by talking about the cats. And no, I mean it was.
I used to work with college students. I was a campus
Oh, shoot,
pastor,
okay.
and so I was always like reeling them back like cats. Like, come on, let's go.
Good. Well, that's why I'm talking about the cats. No, I mean that was jazzing too, and talked about this with a group from the Way Forward the other night, with many people who were there and others who weren't, and sharing our excitement of things. Certainly that youthful element of seeing kids running around, young parents with babies, older parents with babies. It doesn't matter. Just people with really little kids.
Mm-hmm.
Some low key teenagers in the mix. I feel like I saw, and yeah, I mean that on the experience side, very much so, of so much different life. The life I'm surrounded by on my day-to-day basis, humans, cats, that's about it. And like adults and cats. So having the variety of life around is I know that, especially looking at our dappled willow tree, which is thriving after a couple of years out my front window. And so there's other plenty of life around me.
Yeah.
From the highlight show, which I was glad I did the other day and put out to just break down some of my favorite talks and why. And I mean, talk about experiencing the terrain under your earth runners right away. We jogged it in from the campsite because I thought we'd be nearing the tail end of Jesse Elder's opening speech, and we got to catch the whole thing, which was great, and saw him like warming up, moving around.
That's Tom's way of saying I ran really fast.
I bounded, and after a travel day, Jordan was like, "Can we walk?" I said, "We probably should be walking before I take another rock to the heel for the first couple of strides." But never seen so many earth runners in one place, which was really fun. That's a cult that I am down to be a part of, is people rocking earth runners. From the highlight show, among the places where we spent so much time learning, I'll echo Stephen Young's as well. I'm familiar with his work. A Fool's Wisdom is a terrific book that I am encouraging more people to read because of his delivery, which is very much the same. Yeah, I find that to be another foundational way of looking at the world, and his specific focus on material and atomistic way of looking at the world, and every aspect that you can think of the world is coming down to that, versus the beautiful symbolism and therefore transcendent reality of things like alchemy. Having an understanding that what precedes the entire table of elements, which people think to be elemental, fundamental, are the elements of earth, wind, earth, air, water, fire, ether too, and a lot of love for ether and what that actually means for a web of reality. To hear it referred to as the thinnest water, I believe, and know how much fascia is water based and how that really is a sensory web of how we move. that being real feeling. And so yeah, I mean, you may think that that's an unlearning science talk, and yet it does take you into, we touched just very, very briefly at the end when I asked him about gravity, to then say, okay, well, if it's not this weight of atoms and this force that is constantly pulling you in, what does it mean to have a relationship with things like levity or density?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very green and at a novice level to start to entertain that, but it's important to me to think about how I might have a more beautiful way of describing people's bodies to themselves in space, learning a sport like tennis, getting to know their body, and not say, well, your posture is all about counteracting this force that's trying to pull you down. No, I don't think it's like that at all. I think there is our heart's way up here, our head's way up here, our throat's way up here. This so much of where we live our life is what brings us up, and it's because of Stephen Young offering, just these, I think, very natural ways of looking at the world that are elemental, and then inspiring us to think of how we relate to that. His breakdown, again, of just more symbolism and spells around science, who the great names are, what the great topics are, and the punchlines to so many scientific theories just being, grant me this miracle that we've declared is the miracle. We're just seeing evidence of something, symptoms of something. And from the symptoms, we're going to tell you what the story is. Like, I know there's many versions of this, but I'll use one from the wilderness. Is you see a pile of poop, and it's like, from that pile of poop, I'm going to tell you it's a human. Like, well, no, how could you possibly tell me that whole story? I know there's ways to tell and all that, but of the many examples of just taking the product, and we talked about with people like Eileen McCusick as well I think several other presenters mentioned this fact of, to think that the brain is the hub of consciousness and therefore our individuated experience. When has the thing ever preceded the thought of the thing? To have an appreciation for all that is mind and how much of this world is mental. There's a conception, a creation that then gives rise to something like a brain and biochemistry, and therefore the things in our body. And that's why it's worth it to unearth these foundations, because if given, which we know, even if you've not thought about it before, what you have then thought about your place in this world, if it comes from a place of the prevailing mainstream view of the cosmos, that you are insignificant, there's chaos that surrounds you, whirling out of control, you're subject to forces that pull you down. I don't think that creates a very vital existence at times,
No.
Especially not a spiritual one. So
No.
Thank you, Stephen Young, for reminding me of things like that.
Yeah, it's one of those areas that I'm still trying to dig myself out of this hole that I was put in at a very early age, declaring over my life and everybody else's, because that was my programming, but that I am broken, I am not enough, I'm a sinner. And
boy,
yeah,
yes,
right. And
indeed.
see how that is detrimental language for someone that is just trying to believe that they are worthy and okay and safe. And it's counteracting this language of, am I enough or am I not enough? I'm being told I'm not enough because I'm broken. So yes, so I feel like there was a confluence for me of officially coming up and out of that place that I was raised in, to be able to put a stake in the ground and say, like, yeah, no, I don't agree with that. I'm no longer speaking that over my life. And so I had this moment. There are many moments, but it was maybe the third night I was walking back to my tent and something shifted in my spirit, Tom. It was just like a shift where I felt more and fully myself. I felt so Lauren, so rooted, so grounded, and so just like a channel for God to come through me, that I was like, I'm leaving this environment forever changed, because I fully know who I am, and it's okay to be me. It's safe to be me, even if I'm not perfect. And that's actually the key to freedom. To be surrounded by people that are having that same redefining who they are and where they're coming from and who they want to be was just such a gift to me. So did you have any moment throughout the week where you kind of had this consciousness shift? You know what I'm talking about? It was like someone put the keys into the engine and turned it For me, it was that walk back to my tent after some house music and under the full moon and just kind of taking it all in. What about you?
A magnificent share from you, Lauren, and thanks for your open. I know you're sharing that with me and whomever is lucky enough to listen, to think that peak experiences are out there. Mine very much felt like a culmination, just a steady rise at times, and I'm sure I'll think of a moment at some point. Very home based to think that I can physically be in a place like that, and then of course just cherish that, all of those connections, and to be hugged and smiled at and laughed with, laughed with, all of those things, and cried to, or anything like that. I mean, the full range that made me feel very much alive. Like I talk about, the output didn't have that for several years, and when I am out and about and wanting to share with dear friends, is I do feel like I'm chomping at the bit. I feel overflowing with so many things that I've received and researched from the last several years, and do my best not to do it in a way that is evangelizing. And I think that's what was so special again about the people element there, is it's just sharing, and it's not really about recruiting or tipping people off and saying, maybe ushering them through a door, and you can't push people through the door. They start to put up resistance. So that was definitely massive. And the moment of quiet that came after the morning of listening to, I have to cheat a little bit for some reason because it's escaping me. I want to say it was Dr. Well, there's so many doctors, it's hard to say. I believe it was Mark Gober, was Saturday morning, because they switched up so much of the schedule, and Tom Barnett to follow, and knowing how much fear and reticence I have about standing in the freedom that gives me the courage I need to not be afraid of the law and not be afraid of legal weapons. That's really big. That's one of my highest pursuits. Is to, and I'm sure, like health, it's not just you get there one day state and then you get to mail it in for the rest of the day. What I've learned so far from people like the Sovereign's Way and Tom, among others, is that it must be rooted in as unshakable of a philosophy as you can create on your best days. That I am a man, you are a woman. The spiritual power and protection from being coerced and robbed by others is always there. And for Tom to, the combination of, again, just so many times there of feeling the web of that experience run through the web of my own, and excited to create from that, just how it grows and how it heals. Knowing Danny Katz of speaking about things like, all these offers that we encounter. Their initiations too, and then synced up with one of our beloved Confluencers on their Instagram posted a quote attributed to Joan of Arc. I do not fear this. I was born for this. And imagine if that's just how you felt, that I was born for all of these initiations, and it doesn't make it any easier. I'm just saying, instead of shooting in the dark, grasping blindly, you have a very strong philosophy to come from. So I remember just having the response of wanting to, or really intending to sit with that talk and walk around and muse and live that for a day, an hour. And it's extremely powerful to, if you take control. I mean, it is the most detailed and demanding level of the ability to respond, our responsibilities. And, if you say something's an obligation, that's your choice. And to say, choose everything, as if you really said, for everything that you feel obligated to, have you considered a counteroffer? Have you considered, de-escalating or making your own offer to achieve something, instead of, being on the back foot all the time? So I hope that makes sense, because
so much wisdom. I think that was the talk that I saw you and Jordan on the rocks at Cats.
Yeah, I think so. I was just, taught in a good way, not in a tense way, just feeling the very real boost, very real reification of my true nature, that is free and fairly wild, and just says that, I can lean into this offer. I have to make myself clear to myself before I try to make myself clear to anyone else.
That's right.
And that's what's great about that world of trying to get to the root, the roots of law is the law that governs you, the truest, highest natural law. And there is a creator that always provides. I mean, the creator, I believe that. It's hard to declare that as a belief. I know that a source created me and is sustaining me with so many things that I'm not consciously doing. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful. And that gives me a lot of power in this world. Not to hurt people, just to be fully committed to that which is life affirming.
And that power looks like a headlamp on your head, like shining light. Anywhere you turn, anywhere you lay your attention, like Tom, your power is coming through your light that is grounded and rooted, as well as sources coming in and through. It reminds me of Veda Austin. She briefly mentioned this towards the end of her talk. She said something along the lines of like where we put our consciousness, conscious expression is where we put our light. And then she went to go share about that story of her friend who could commune with animals and bees. Her friend was staring at a beehive and just sending love, sending appreciation, just resonating at a heart coherent level with this beautiful beehive, right? And one of the bees comes out of the hive and is just buzzing and starts talking to Veda's friend, I believe it was. And this bee said, I'm paraphrasing, but this bee said, hey, like we love that you love us so much and we love that you appreciate us, but we actually can't do our best work with your bright light shining into our beehive because we prefer a darker environment.
That's got to be so good to hear. That's got to be.
And so since I heard Veda say that, I have just been envisioning a headlamp on my head, just anywhere I put my conscious expression, my conscious attention is quite literally and metaphysically where I and you are shedding our light.
It's true, and that's why it was so special to watch your light bounce around the place and turning to see someone before, and just people who come in beaming, smiling. And again, we talked about posture is to go through the world with a heart that's open. And we are just on a, I don't get into too much, the monkeys and the reptiles. I understand the concept of reptilian brain and part of that for human development.
Right.
I don't quite subscribe to evolution in terms of like, we come from monkeys. It's too big of a leap in my mind. If you've seen the image of the sequence of chimp to man, there's at least 2 fucking huge gaps in those images in my mind. So they're just too big of leaps for me. And so even still, I think about that we go through the world organs out, like this little baby skin to keep us from being pierced by thorns and thickets, let alone by people's words and emotions and their own energy.
That's right.
So we're vulnerable in that sense. And so then there is a counter, this opening up. The more I learn about posture, I have this. Are you familiar with Moshe Feldenkrais?
I've been a Feldy for a couple years.
Of course you have. Okay, great. So I'm preaching to the preacher, literally on so many levels.
I love Feldenkrais. Like it's been such a gift in physically becoming well, but then also like mentally getting back online.
Well, say more if you don't mind. I mean, I'd love to hear it. And if you haven't.
My Feldenkrais teacher, her name is Heidi. She actually just retired, but I was part of her practice for about 2 years, and she just turned 90.
Oh, word?
And she is just, full of
That's
life,
full
of energy, full of wisdom, and still going strong, right? So I look at Heidi and I go, wow, I can't wait to be 90 and doing all the things. I really had to find a practice where I was neurologically moving my body, but I wasn't moving my body because my body was in so much pain. I would be able to imagine my leg moving or my back moving, and then the neurons would fire that would actually feel like I was moving. And I know that sounds like, for someone that doesn't understand Feldenkrais, like, what?
Well, and were you stacking that with open focus? Was that part of your journey as well?
Yeah, well, let me just say this. For about 2.5 years, Tom, I I was in 10 to 15 hours of appointments, doctor's offices, specialists for 2.5 years, 10 to 15 hours a week. So it was a part-time job to just
Full-time job.
get well and get out of pain and get help of what is going wrong with me. So, yes, so to say that I kind of tried everything, I really did. Not everything, but almost everything. But Feldenkrais was such a gift because I actually had to slow down enough to change my brain. I was moving way too fast. I was way too neurotic. I had too much caffeine. And I realized through Feldenkrais, the slower I go, the more impact it has on my mind, which my mind, as you know, then impacts muscles firing, bones stacking. Yeah. So tell me more. Are you in a Feldenkrais practice? Are you reading about it?
No, I had been introduced to it through Czech Institute, who incorporates
Nice.
some of those things that are more dedicated to mobility in a very particular sense, for T-spine and hips and things like that, which is part of my journey. I mean, I don't do it as a daily anymore. I'm surrounded by CrossFit people who I see them do really hypermobile moves before they then go do weighted hypermobile moves. Of course, I mean, so much of that is about speed and just getting through a fucking rep. And I think if I held myself to the highest challenge teaching anything about the body and therefore tennis, it's getting people to slow down. And I do. I mean, again, to have people tune into their eyes, for some of my more athletic people, as they're doing that, I say, and what's your big toe doing? Can you feel your big toe? And we're in tennis shoes. It's different when you can get people out of their shoes. And I've felt the difference now that I feel comfortable at my gym. Of course, it's springtime now, working out barefoot, doing balance stuff with the cables like today. And I know people are curious. I know there are plenty of people there who just ask why. Why do something like that? Why have your stinky feet out there? I say, well, it feels amazing. So, and all I would want is that for someone else. And you have to take it slow, as if I have to feel, or if I am deliberate about feeling all of my 10 toes on the ground, then I go through a movement. It makes me slow down and it makes me really tune in. And so I've discovered that through, you're familiar with David Weck, creator of the Bosu ball, among many other great gym tools. So half dome exercise ball on the ground. You
I can
do so
tell
many
you're
great.
on a ball right now.
Yes, yeah, I'm down to it. It's the best I've felt to, because in a chair, even if you can swivel, it does limit you, and I like to be able
Someone
to.
asked me actually I forget which talk it was at the brewery, when I was sitting in those chairs, like I go back and forth like this. And this gentleman, we met him together the first day, Michael, remember him?
Michael, of course. Yes, of
Yes,
course.
Michael was like, "Hey, I don't know if you realize this or not, but you are like shifting back and forth in your chair the same way I do." I was like, "I am so sorry. Was I distracting you?"
You threw off his rhythm. Those are the only orbits I think I believe in. It's just like, are we gonna knock noses in a minute? No, it's. So I'm very new to it. I am already enjoying the reading about his philosophy, and I wasn't being rude. I was looking at my phone because there was a woman who's a longtime Feldenkrais practitioner, expert in somatic healing, who was just on a great podcast called Terrain Theory, and her name is Peggy Honig. And she had them do exercises live, so I'm refreshing on that yeah, I mean, doing something fun. I mean, yes, I'm on a Swiss ball. I brought up David Weck because he said among all of the books that he could have people read just to tune into the world of movement and posture was Awareness Through Movement by
That's
Moshe
great.
Feldenkrais. Yeah, I mean, just feels good to so much of the philosophy. One of the things that I love that he talked about and I bring onto the court is we we reach, because of the structure of our society on many levels and many institutions that say that this is okay, we reach a certain level of functional mediocrity with our movements, with our habits, with our effort at work, with our effort in relationship. Just, this is good enough to subsist. And that doesn't really open people up necessarily to learning new things, seeking challenge and slowing down to be aware of as many parts as possible of the many pearls of wisdom that Eileen McCusick shared was, among others, I think Dr. Anna Maria Oliva as well. How many of your yous are you in tune with right now? Physical, emotional, mental, hormonal, relational, spiritual, athletic. I know they're all overlap, but it's a high calling to be able to do that. And I think having the toolkit to, at any point, especially in moments of conflict or before you move, which is, it's not conflict, it's just action, to be able to tune into something like your breath, like your TVA, like your diaphragm. Where's your head in this world? I mean, can you feel how far forward you're leaning or to one side? And, from there you just get to really take account and then go forward in the world. And so I love starting there. And I'm seeking every chance I can to edify people with how to tune into their posture. And that's why I love working with Brooke McPoyle for fascia and breath.
Very cool.
Yeah,
that was a fun session, wasn't it? We were certainly wild, creative, and free in that session.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, we let it rip. Being able to when I heard the kids, like, they were one of my memories that is just sticking around, because it was most of the nights that we were there was hearing a little, sounded like a really young baby boy or toddler or whatever, a really little kid, sounded like a boy, wailing in the middle of the night, like he's in pain. Not just like, I don't know, not just like baby crying because hungry, was like maybe sick or something like that, or scared, whatever. And my first thought is, well, first I heard his dad singing to him instead of shh or it's okay. No, you're just singing. Great. And in like a nice baritone, low, soft. It was great. And then the second thing I thought was, gosh, kids have great lungs. Gosh, they really know how to belt it out, scream to each other so that you hear everything that they're saying. And I love seeing the little boys who, and I remember this, I still feel like this sometimes, is saying 18 different sounds of words before they can actually say the thing, just because they're so excited and the volume is so full and the laughs and the cries are so full. And who quieted you? I mean, just being indoors quiets you.
Yeah, that's right. Getting out of the rhythm of nature itself. We were in the yurt for Brooke's session, and that was a powerful space too, because I think
geometrically supportive.
That's right. The ergonomics of the environment created an acoustical dream. I want to talk about a few magical moments, because I feel like being surrounded with 700 plus like-hearted people,
which it never felt like for me. I mean,
it really didn't. I think there was enough space where people could move around. And so, you ran into people multiple times, but you also, not often, right? So it was this beautiful ability to meet new people and hear new conversations and connect. But I will say there was such a synchronistic magic there. So a few weeks before the event, I realized that my flight left like 6 a.m. Monday morning. And there were no shuttle rides. And I didn't even think about that when I booked, because let's think about it later. So I had seen in the Confluence Telegram chat that there was this woman named Stacy and Brian Costello. I hope I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, totally hit it off with Brian.
I'm linked up with Brian now.
He's awesome. He was a shuttle buddy of mine.
Yeah.
And so they had been talking about getting a ride to the airport Monday morning because Stacy had a car. And I was like, awesome. Like, I would love to join you. This is great. And then right out the gate, there's this energy of people helping each other, helping one another in really their needs. So it was day maybe 3, Tom, where I was like, like Confluence is going to be over before I know it. Like, I really need to connect with Stacy because we don't have good service. I don't live on my phone hardly at all anyway. And so I was like, I really need to meet Stacy today. All right. So the first workshop out the gate, I walk into the yurt, it's packed with people, grown adults just like squeezing in to hear whoever's speaking. There's one spot on the wall. I sit on the wall next to this woman. She introduces herself and she is Stacy. And that just kept happening to me it happens over and over in my life in general, but the I would say the force of it was just so heightened and so intense to just speak out into the world what you need, what you want, and that energy is meeting you with your needs. So anyway, I want to hear from you, Tom. Were there any sort of moments like that occurred for you that were just reminding you of the importance of speaking your needs and speaking your wants?
Very much the time. I mean, within an hour of being there, getting a big hug and a dap and a couple minutes with Alec. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I know he has a ton of things to do. And he held up with that throughout all the weekend, making time for people despite all that he was juggling. And from my impression of him from afar, someone who is very present, you have to be able to explore great conversations and great pursuits and all the things that are of value in your life. And yeah, I mean, appreciating how much I had thought about that was that this is a good time for me to connect with these people whom I have deep admiration for. And admiration is an elusive thing because I don't admire presidents and pop stars like I used to. I used to, especially athletes. I heard a great reminder from a baseball journalist in the Ken Burns documentary on baseball, Epic. People who are familiar with Ken Burns, him doing, I think, 9 innings, so 9 2-hour episodes on the history of baseball. And I talked about that with Mike Winter, who I love, and seeing him beam wherever he went. Tall, lanky guy, athlete, skater, I should say. Being able to talk about that, but a baseball journalist saying that we can hold the two experiences of deeply admiring the work ethic and the grace and the posture and ability and effort from our professional athletes. And then we judge them in the same way that we would judge a family member or a friend. As you try to say, I see how deeply flawed, my friends are, and they do stupid shit and they say stupid shit, and because they're not deeply flawed. I know we're getting away from, I agree with you that it's not about how imperfect you are. It's not about that. It's just, fallible, foolish at times, and sometimes foul. And we hold space for all of that. So I don't admire those people like I used to, and getting flesh, blood, and soul people like that was deeply magical for me to go from the world of being guided to so many portals by people like Alec and Mike and Mark Gober and Eileen McCusick, and getting great time with Danny Katz, whom I've interviewed and has been a great resource to me for language, to say what I mean and mean what I say, and to do it in I love that she said, most often in a neutral way, and then we can get to expansive love and light, blessings, all that stuff. There's, of course, space for that. But when you're hurting or healing or uncertain, there's neutral language that still keeps you strong, unfuckwithable, as she says, which I so appreciate. And so those were definitely moments of magic. Having my love with me, which you'll have the experience of next year, to rise and to sleep together out in nature, which was a first for us, and share all these moments, to have her lean over my shoulder when we're on the rocks and just say, like, I really love listening to it. Like, I love Eileen. I love her vibe, and sharing that with her, deeply magical, because most of my inputs have just been between my own 2 ears, and Jordan continues to be open and curious, as she always has been. And so then to introduce her to now people I can call almost friends, I call Alec a friend now, and many other people. Just to have also like friends, the care factor about my life, to be curious about what my circumstances are, and to share with people just some of my dynamics of my day-to-day here at home. And then to get into our hero and heroine's journey was it was all magic. Anytime my mouth was closed or open, it was magic.
So tell me, in what ways do you feel different as a person post-Confluence?
Deeply inspired, which is not entirely different from who I am. There is so much that inspires me, and a lot of it can just be my own questions or experiences, but then to have people and their actions and what they're creating, I feel changed in the way that I have more certainty around these several things that I love to do and am very good at doing, and am seeking higher levels of competency and confidence, and knowing how many people are otherwise like that out in the world, like you, and doing it from a place of honor and value and consistent service. This is the year of service, as I named it for myself, and what I'm about this year, inspired by adjacent communities to the way forward, and just seemed right, and especially starting new coaching roles and real estate roles, and cultivating conscious clarity around my service, and feeling directed by that, like this, having the support that now I've got more teammates out there.
Right.
not really feeling like I'm doing it alone because it's not isolated or it's not insignificant because now I know so many other people do. So that's the inspiration. That feels like a bottomless well that I can dip into every day. And it also reifies my mantra for the year around all I need is chi. I don't need coffee. I don't need much.
Yes,
But
Chi.
these, yes, chi. Yeah, these intangibles that
Mhm.
are these that are ethereal, that live in the ether, a much deeper connection to that, and that has certainly woven its way into slowing down my own qigong practices. I'm on today was day 47. To do 100 in a row is my discipline, and like really knowing that that's that practice is I'm tuning back in as the sun has just risen. I'm on the up. I have a lot to give this day, by choice, and the groundswell of energy that became available from that that is changing. I mean, it does feel like another another upgrade for me,
Mhm.
to walk through another portal for me. And there's still been the days of contraction, and there's still been the moments of contraction, which is the spiral, the image that I loved from Eileen McCusick of, you know, go into both. You spiral in and up and out, the centrifugal and centripetal action. We get to keep doing both. The analemma, the infinity walk. Oh, I meant to ask you. That's a great random segue for me. Are you familiar with the Infinity Walk? The book is by Deborah Sunbeck, Dr. Deborah Sunbeck. I feel like it's not probably just an arm's length or two from the Feldy world and Feldenkrais and things like that. I had seen it through a coach of having kids run in a figure eight, keeping their eyes fixed on a target the whole time. So no turning around, you're not blind to the target, passing a bulb around their back as they count down from, the coach will just say like, count down from 50 by twos, count down from 40 by fours. And performing so many tasks, but my favorite part is that they're running in an analemma, in an infinity. And there's so much of that. It's just you keep going through different spirals, different cycles. Oh, I've been here again. And that's that's the journey. We'll just do that at different planes, I'm starting to realize. And so the two things, the contraction is part of it, but then when I come back out, it does seem like at another level of, yeah, just access to what I intend to co-create for myself, by myself, and then with other people.
Beautiful. Well said. I mean, I'm thinking about all the infinity loops and the figure eights as I interacted with various beautiful souls at Confluence. Kind of motion of back and forth, of giving and receiving. Yeah, I just feel totally upgraded. And of course, life, like you said, is a spiral. So it's like some of these concepts I have been living them and breathing them. Like Eileen's work, I've been living that and breathing that for so many years. I'm waiting, hopefully this afternoon, for a new fork to come in the mail.
Boy, are you running to check your mail? I mean, do you have a hard out in a time?
Yeah, Tom, I gotta go. I need to go do some tuning fork practice. I love this community. Oh gosh, no, but I was just
Definitely. Hey,
saying,
I mean, priorities. I know you love yourself. I mean, you gotta care for a girl. You gotta do it.
other people much better when I love myself. Truly, truly, truly. Yeah, the life being a spiral. I mean, some of this stuff, right? Like it felt like, man, I needed to hear that again in that fresh new way for it to integrate. And so it's like I'm constantly relearning and rehearing things in a framework that I go, oh, that took me by surprise. I haven't heard it that way.
That's like we said at the beginning about reminders. I mean, I had a fair or even precursory knowledge, some much deeper than that, of the speakers and ideally what their presentations would be about. And still, I enjoyed it thoroughly because of the new ways that they put it, the simpler ways that they put it, the reminding ways that they put it, and that just helps with my own retention. And with greater retention is if something else connects. And oh, now I see. That's the great language around vision that I love so much. The things it's so worth to tune into. I see. So there has to be an inner vision, and then literally what that means to our physical experience. Only when things become, that we know what we're looking for, or at least we're open to looking instead of, I don't know what that is, and I'm not gonna look at it. I don't know what that pink. I've never seen a Pink Panther in my life, but there's one in the corner. I'm not gonna look at it.
I saw a T-shirt
No.
of somebody wearing, and it said "realize,
But yeah,
realized," and it said something else, but I only caught the
Re-
realize.
it says real
Yes,
eyes, realize, real
that's what it
lies.
was. Realize. See, my
Yeah.
consciousness only caught the first two lines. I already know. We're
Yes. I don't even need anything else.
we're in
One
truth,
line
baby.
would
We're
have been
not
fine.
in lies anymore. We're in truth.
Real truth. I mean, shoot, that could be another mantra for that. As close to the truth as we can get, and even the place of mystery still felt great with Mark Gober fleshing things out like that. Is even to say something like I'm a flat earther, which I'm not. I don't subscribe to that. But flat Earth as opposed to globe Earth is such a limiting. You can't even say that that's truth because it's such a limiting, you know, element of minutia that that's what, cosmos. Can we have more mystery around the cosmos or how we all connect? I'm good with that. But that's part of truth seeking as well. Is instead of saying, I mean, the reason I circulate My Body is Brilliant in PDF form in the video that Alec had put out, I think maybe in anticipation of Confluence news last year. What if My Body is Brilliant? And people hopefully know that I've shared it I read it on my podcast, broke it down, share frequently because I tell people that in concert with the terrain philosophy of health is the most beautiful vision of the world that I have encountered to date.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm choosing. I'm not. It's not being foisted upon me like other philosophies of how we live in this world that we've talked about. That just I don't find them as good, true, or beautiful. And it's the most good, most true, most beautiful philosophy that I've found because that's how I feel when I am no longer afraid. Someone asked me today, they said, Tom, would you rather eat something with seed oils? They said Coach Tom, they call me Coach Tom, but even or Coach Fools
I like
is
that.
what Coach Molly calls me. Would you rather eat something with seed oils or lick a dust bunny off the ground? I said, probably lick the dust bunny off the ground because she's thinking like germs. I said, I will lick anything in this gym. Like, I fucking will. And that's just deeply liberating. And I said to Alec, among others, maybe to you, that that is the trumpet I will put down last. That is the trumpet I pick up every day. Is that once you are no longer afraid of being possessed in the way that diseases are described, either contagiously or chronically, autoimmune. What a fucking wild diagnosis to say that. Basically, like cancer. Cancer, they tell you will kill you much sooner, but autoimmune is you'll be dying. You'll feel like dying every day of your life.
I was given multiple
Really?
autoimmune diagnoses.
Okay. Yeah.
I did
Again, I
feel
know
like
I'm.
dying, actually. That was true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and thank God for you. I mean, thank God you're you, Lauren, because it's a blessing that you've had the courage to save yourself. And I think that's where, as long as you're open about it in any way among people and doing this, I'm really looking forward to sharing this with my sphere of influence. Against that sphere of influence is
Yeah.
about the only sphere I believe in.
But continue on with that track, Tom, because this is hugely significant about when we are no longer afraid. Keep going.
Yes, and even to put a lid on things like flat Earth again, we say I joke about the sphere, whatever shape it is. I mean, if you say okay, it's a tilted ball, where again, like you and I are up here, wherever we are in this realm right now, the way I find this stuff funny, if you'll indulge me, the way that the globe is described is right now there are people in Australia sleeping with their feet are touching our feet and they're upside down. It's like they're swimming. Like that's what that image means, and you have to be able to play with that and say that seems fucking stupid because I know my Aussie buddies that's not their experience. So, and that doesn't mean that it's flat, but you take something like energetically, metaphysically, which still impacts our physical reality, has the word physical in it for God's sakes, a torus field. A torus field is such a magical, dynamic, magnetic, flowing field. I'm choosing that, at least for now. Those are the more beautiful things. And so I feel free to explore things like that because I'm not afraid of it's not even standing out. It's just creating my own experience of reality that I choose to be again as beautiful and as empowering as I can. and I don't see it infringing on people's freedom. So I feel pretty good about that until I project and hold people hostage until they agree with me that the ball is stupid or not. But whatever that is, I'm guilty of all of that. Even still, when I'm at my best, it comes from a place of modeling for other people what love over fear feels like. And yeah, I mean, that's the reason I am vocal about, if you're not afraid of the invisible external things that we call germs, then you start to not be so afraid of other people's words. I mean, you get into how do I alchemize other people's projection. I deeply appreciate, and I've talked about a couple of times, Paul Leendertz, who did 3+ hours with Alec on a podcast of root cause of cancer. Instead of talking about the particular details of certain organ relationships to suppressed emotions, just talking about suppressed emotions in general as it relates to cancer, he said, in this world, in the modern world, for the most part, overwhelmingly, our first impression of love out of the womb is to have our boundaries pierced by a needle. And I always couch this by saying I have deep sympathy and understanding for a parent who would say, this life that we just brought into this world, I will do anything to keep that kid from getting smallpox, measles, a flu, whatever I believe about, vaccines in the body. Like, that little baby does not have a robust anything yet. So I will do anything to protect them. And that's love. And it still involves a denial of safety, of wholeness, of perfection in a way. And instead I will, allow someone else or empower someone else choosing it. No one's making you do it. Of course, the choices along the way to be in a hospital. Even still, it's always an offer. I don't care. I'll fight tooth and nail. Yes, you deliver the baby in the hospital. That's it. Give me my baby. I want my baby. That's a wrap. Says the guy who has never, will never deliver a baby. But
Never say never.
What's that? Never.
I mean,
You're right. Fair enough. I would like to say never about that. I feel good about that. I appreciate the challenge. I'm still open to that. Anything else goes. But bringing that up in the context of, and it's another level, as we know, with circumcision, because that baby boy is tied down and his procreative organ is deeply desensitized, for the rest of his life, desensitized, piece taken away, a protection. It's very much a sensory thing, totally changes sex. And I'm lucky, from the healing tradition of my grandfather, who was a family doctor in Western Massachusetts, an industrial town, some, upper middle class, and he's a physician. I mean, he's upper middle class, through the better part of the 20th century. And, my mom talks about how free of charge to community members did talk appointments, letting people just come talk. And not knowing that he's not a psychiatrist, psychologist, but come talk, having an awareness of people's issue. And he was still a mainstream licensed allopathic doctor. But the awareness that at some point he says, yeah, that little baby, just, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, you don't have to do anything. Just the little baby boy is fine. And so I'm glad I come from that lineage, as some things do. I think it skips a generation, but I'm picking up the mantle with that. And yes, I bring that up to emphasize my belief that there is nothing to fear. It is the mind killer. I'm not afraid of this. I was born for this type deal. All of these initiations, all these visits from the pain teacher, as long as I'm choosing them. I like talking about the boundary as someone who has had skin issues that were, poison ivy is something I haven't mastered yet. Although I didn't get any in Texas, which was a triumph.
I actually just picked some blackberries in a field 2 nights ago with Ryan, and there was poison ivy everywhere. But I'm like, you know what? Those blackberries are going to be so good. I'm just not even going to fear the poison ivy.
Atta babe. That's Becky, who's part of the way forward, encouraged me to just, she said, just brainwash yourself out of poison ivy. But I like to bring up the boundary and the skin being our boundary, because the issues that come up with skin issues or inability to heal surface wounds on the skin or anything like that, that's again our relationship where we become, hopefully we level up more to not be afraid of things and still have a boundary and still be able to set that with others. Bless your heart, Lauren, learning the power of won't power. Willpower is great. Won't power is a must. I really will not do that. I cannot do that. The answer is no. And that is a superpower. So that helps create, again, your standing in the world, how you engage with any offer, how you engage with any person. and never from a place of fear that someone, I believe it was Jesse Elder, who first, among others, who have been leaders in the most empowering philosophies of law, that even if 50 people show up outside my door, and granted, scary, fundamentally, they have no more power, rights, privilege, whatever you want to call it, than me. It's not about numbers. It's not whatever badge they wear, whatever title they have. It does not make them empowered to do anything to me. And there's force and there's violence, and I don't invite that. This is why I love this community, is having a pulse on as many parts of yourself as you can to cultivate resilience and strength there. And if you try to do that and then say, anybody can do anything to me, and any germ can get through my defenses, and anything can penetrate my skin and my biofield because I'm porous, because I'm weak and afraid and incoherent and unhealthy and traumatized and not leaning into the good work and the good play of healing that, so I don't perpetuate it and inflict upon others. I mean, that is the great, I call it the great play. I mean, it's been the great work, and it's still very playful, because that's child's work. That's what you can do in childhood. Some are luckier than others to have that. Some have different soul contracts. We all do. And I loved how Paul spoke about that, is that if that was your springboard into life, is true soul communication, then you wouldn't be having to do so much unlearning and deprogramming all the while. But some are huge leaps, is to say, I'm done being afraid of, or like I said, as best I can. And always choosing my best when I remember to nothing outside of me is going to take me out.
You had a chance to go to Samuel Wu's workshop. It was on,
No, I did
titled
not.
Living Water. I
Yes,
had the
yes.
privilege of having some really fruitful conversations with him. And
Oh, good.
he,
Yeah, he was wide open.
yeah, and we got to share our own experience of being in the church ministry and kind of coming up and out of that through a lot of those programs. And he was really helpful to me. But he said, when you stop asking questions, you just stop growing. And so when we go to events like this and we're having conversations about the biofield and flat earth and consciousness, we are just not afraid of asking questions. And I think at the end of the day, we are on this journey, Tom, because maybe call us a little brazen, but also just call us unafraid of the next question to ask, because that is not something that we're intimidated by, whether it's, I don't know the answer to that, or, oh, that's a really interesting perspective, I've never thought about that. I mean, I know you are a lifelong learner like myself, and so we are constantly just going to keep learning another thing, a new thing, in a different way with different flavor, and that makes life so much more fun. I don't have half of the things figured out, because I have entered into this realm to learn and to keep learning. And I think through all of those questions, we figured out along the way that actually it's not so scary out there.
It's not. It's a survival and a thrival thing. I see it, because if I failed to learn my lessons in relationship over 12 years, and chipping away, it's not like you learn it one day and you take a final exam and then yeah, that's what comes to mind first, is that level of learning. And so then I also know I have to stack my arsenal to and not it's not defense weaponry. It's just I like to have as much depth as I can of, and that is potential. That is my greatest capacity, is how much of life's total uncertainty and potential am I unafraid of? Because I've been afraid of my potential and just what that means for literally. I mean, we've had this conversation. This is the busiest I've been in years, to be on the tennis court, to be working in real estate, to be doing more of this, to be traveling, whatever. Not whatever. I mean, there's so much good, and it is fun. And this is why I invest so much in my energy to preserve it, to build it back up when I need to, so it can be a pretty big battery and run and go, and then not get to zero and try to do shit on zero. Is okay. I know what 20 looks like, and I know what 4, even half a battery. You're not putting on the same power at half battery. I don't know why people can't conceive of that. Is it's not the same as a mostly full battery. And if it's just red line after red line, that doesn't lead to anything except burnout. And so if I don't learn those lessons, then there's pain, and it's self-inflicted pain. It's self-inflicted pressure and stress, and so much of it comes from lack of clarity. I've found for myself is, Lauren, this is good because for as much as I second guess the connection I feel to those of us who were not at Confluence, which is billions of people ostensibly, though I am skeptical of how many people there are in this realm because you drive around Texas, there's a lot of land. I mean, we know that. People are concentrated and we know where to find them. But anyway, part of what helps me with that connection to people is, I just understand why the majority of us are not at Confluence. I understand why most of the people are, for a time, unwilling to lean into the pain, feel things deeply, and then wonder, what can I do differently? It is the confusion. As I've had recently going to Confluence, just had a foot thing, which is wild. I had something like it before, not a wart, but some sort of growth on my foot that, I'm on my feet a lot. I was doing 12, 14-hour days on the tennis court, in the week, not every day, but 1 or 2 days a week before going to Confluence. And playing, having to jump in and play tennis with people in clinics in barefoot shoes and minimalist shoes. I do that when I'm in controlled movement environments, not trying to slide and sprint, and not a good idea. But anyway, these things coming up, and even I have the moments, not that I'm a master of these things at all, but it's like, fuck, what do I do to determine what exactly this is? Because I had pain before I saw a growth in my foot. And then I was just sort of like, oh, okay. And it's localized just to that point, even though when I would run and play tennis, I would feel it in other parts of the top of my foot. I bring all this to say because at some point there was a surrender. I mean, there is a surrender, and I'm taking baths, and I'm out at, my bare feet on the ground, and I'm getting blood flow there. I mean, I am still doing things. It's similar to Alec. We talked about that. I said, Alec, I know people chirped you about, my body is brilliant and it doesn't do anything wrong, and you did literally 10 things to heal it with homeopathy and band work and blood flow and DMSO, castor oil, sauna, all these things. And I said, but you throw the kitchen sink and the fucking bathtub at it when you do need to perform. He had to go perform
In
in a
like
couple of
12
days.
days.
That's right. That's right. Maybe even a little. Yeah, I think that's about right. Still, not a great time for an intense ankle. Like, people would be in months of
But
PT
it was
after.
the perfect time.
It was. I mean, it called him to throw the whole toolkit at it. And again, because he's such a learner, and that's what I am developing, is that capacity for resilience, because I have a deep net and now a web. The web grows. If I really had to go outside myself to be pointed in a direction back toward myself in the end, I can now call upon this expanding community. That is such a wealth
Yeah.
that is invaluable, that I now feel. I mean, that's very much part of how I'm changed too. I mean, do you dig that? I mean, do you feel like that too? I mean, obviously you've explored so many avenues and one of the things I love about Feldenkrais is, because someone said, so how do you explain Feldenkrais as a modality? And this woman said, it's a dynamic learning system. It's not a modality, is massage
Right.
or yoga, this one thing. Awareness through movement is a dynamic learning system.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the person in the gym without headphones in because I want to be fully present to every movement that I am making, every step I'm walking, so that I am so aware, one, to prevent injury, but also to fire neurons that maybe are a little sleepy. Tom, we probably need to wrap this up, but I need to ask you this question before we do. But before I ask this, is there anything else from Confluence that you wanted to mention?
The awe-inspiring synchronicities, the stacking, the sequencing of it all. There was very much a meaning and a purpose there, and meeting you was a great cornerstone of that. And it did. It was that is the connection that I believe we're talking about. And words hardly do it justice, as usual. That environment created that, to have such an abundance of free energy, vital energy, and then to have that coincide with all these tremendous, profound inputs that are aligned with each other in their principles and in their core. Details may vary. That's what makes it fun, and that's what
Choose
made
your
it
own
so
adventure.
so exciting. Very very much so. It was choose your own adventure, and I wanted to confirm that for people, that this is a lean in type time, is for these things that are really building us up and then inspire us to go build. It's time to lean in, and that was a huge push off the great story goes. That's something that pushes you off the cliff and you fly.
Yeah. And it was so glorious to not feel alone anymore. Especially in 2020, looking around and going, oh my gosh, no one else is following the sovereign freedom decisions I'm following. So let me go to the internet, right? And see who is. And so to be able to meet these courageous heroes of mine in the flesh and to connect with them at a heart level and to offer a genuine thank you for giving me courage when I needed courage the most. I am now courageous because of you. It was just such a, you had to be there. You had to be there experience.
That's what the shirts are gonna say.
Gosh. But yeah, I have so much gratitude in my heart, and I immediately hit it off with you, Tom, and Jordan, and I was like, oh man, we're gonna have so much fun, and I'm just so grateful to be sharing this container with you. I'm ready to ask you this question though, okay? All right. How has your understanding and your experience with your clients' biofields changed their tennis games?
I know I'm lucky because in general, people are really happy to be there. And so, I mean, they do come in with an openness. And yeah, I mean, I had not conceived of it on that level, and still knowing that, although I will say that the day before I left, the owner, director of the club, who also has a significant role in the governing body of tennis in New England, it's USTA, United States, New England division, said that in the 5 months that I've been there, he said people are moved and inspired, yes, because, you bring great energy and enthusiasm and all that. And when he said, and because of how you live, I mean, that to me lets me know that I am the coherent field that can help the weakened and just the incoherent fields, the ones that are more porous. And I do feel like from the little kids on up, when I really am able to tap into heart-to-heart intention, keeping things playful, keeping things seamless in a way, then it makes a big difference. And one of the metaphors I love to give people lately is just so people know that I'm looking to go deep and there is a level of coherence that I am compelled to bring to the court. Is when we start our warm-ups, we have baskets of 200 balls, but I say for right now you get one ball. And, instead of wailing on it, thinking I'm just going to whack at it and, they'll just feed the next one. I said, what if you have one ball? So wouldn't you, stroke it? They're called tennis strokes for a reason. Is, that's what I tell the kids. I say to the kids that I teach, I say, show me how you pet your cat. I say, now show me how you hit the tennis ball. And I said, they're called strokes for a reason, because it is more, you're playing an instrument. There's a sensitivity there, and there's a slowness that's required there. And when I remind myself to be careful, full of care, careful doesn't mean timid or tentative. I say full of care, which means full of attention and awareness. I say, oh, you get one ball. What if I told you you have one ball for the rest of the day? What if I told you you have one ball for life? I say you have one body for life. You have one you for life. And you don't just get to feed in another ball or, let me do another thing. And I'm just going to reset and throw out and no. And I'm looking for those thought-provoking, open-ended, potentially heart and mind-opening questions that, are knocking on the door of people's biofield saying, if you let me a little closer, we will. And then because I see, I can describe that to people and all the advantages that come from a greater biomechanical awareness. And skills lead to confidence, and confidence leads to winning. Novak Djokovic says it doesn't make sense to be anything other than confident, especially in the tennis court. If you're doubtful, fearful, tentative, especially if you don't have the skills, especially if you don't have the awareness, then it will be stressful and it will lose its fun. And most people don't play tennis, they play at tennis. It's this thing that I do, not this deeply enlightening part of my life. And so thank you for planting that seed, because now I can be more hyper conscious of that. Well, not hyper conscious, still just flow with people. And it does impact. I am aware of it because I know that they're more than just the member, the client, the person that shows up in front of me. They're bringing a lot of their own light to it. So,
and if you think about their field, I mean, expanding from here to 6 feet to almost up to 40 feet, right? So they're taking up massive space on the tennis fields. So I just can't imagine if they understood their power, their tennis would just up level as well. So anyway, my tuning fork is probably here.
It's melting.
So Eileen and I are going to go hang out.
Are you going to rap with her? Is she someone you're going to reach out to?
I would love to. And as Danny Katz says, not if, when.
Okay, thank you for making this an immediate win. You gave me so many gifts today, and this is the circulation of intense electricity, and to be able to do this, and I'm so thankful for that opportune moment by the popsicles to know you and know you from the jump and know you even more now. And thank you for a really brilliant, you were a brilliant guide today.
Well, thank you for your love and your heart, your open heart, all of your knowledge, all your wisdom. Please give my love to your other half, Jordan.
Really will.
Have an amazing day, Tom, and we will talk later.
We sure will. Thank you. This is a highlight. Thanks, Lauren.